Yeah, we're already going. No, what we have is just kind of a feature show,
all right.
To be able to feature all the good people in Fort Smith,
okay,
and feature our area because I think this is the best area in America.
Yeah.
And I was really it right away. I felt your energy.
Yeah.
And I was excited, because I was like, oh, wow, somebody's running for office. Hey, what's with it? So,
according to Mayor McGill, he's excited that the youth of Fort Smith are getting involved, and I'm like, sir, I am 31.
He means it, though.
I know, and it's great, but it's just really funny because in my mind, I'm like, I'm not a youth anymore.
I'm older, and he still calls me youth.
I love it.
Calls
I love
me young
him.
Man and,
He's great.
And all that.
He's great.
Andre and them, they say that they need people waiting in the wings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So why?
Yeah.
But you're Drew. So we'll say you're Drew.
I'm Drew.
Drew, and what's your last name, Drew?
Smith.
There you go.
Yeah.
Get down. I couldn't even pretend like I because I couldn't.
Because it's like nah, you're fine. It's one of those things that people do the whole, how do you spell your last name? And I'm like, you just straight forgot my last name. It's cool.
I don't play like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just, hey, I forgot your name.
Yep.
Let me tell you for 5 minutes here why I should have remembered your name.
Nah, it's fine. So I live over at the Links, and I've lived there the whole time I've lived in Arkansas, which is coming up on 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just learned my neighbor's name 2 weeks ago.
Get down.
Which is I was coming back from the gym and he's like, what is your name? And I was like, oh, thank goodness that he said this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I do it. We should all just normalize being like, what's your name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's we're all awkward to a certain extent. And
I had your card in my pocket and was like, I could just look at it real quick.
Yeah.
And I started patting. I was like, I'm not going to spend 15 more minutes looking for that. Yeah. That's just me. That's
fine. That's
fine. So why you're 31.
Yeah.
You don't need extra headaches. So why? I mean, I think it's more than a headache. It's a great thing.
No, for sure.
Running, but why? So first, you're running for position 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Open position. And the election is, tell us when the election is.
So the primary is August 9th.
Okay.
And if there's only 2 people running, it goes to the general, which is November. Second Tuesday after the first Monday.
Yeah.
And so, which I don't know that date right off the top of my head.
I think it's the 8th or
something like
the
that.
9th, something like that.
Something like that. But by Constitution, the second Tuesday after the first Monday, and so if there's more than 2, there'll be a primary on the 9th of August, and if any one person gets 50.1% of the votes, they are elected. However, if no one gets a majority, the top 2 go to the general election.
Get down. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. So there's a runoff. So there's primaries on August 9th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, get down. So that's really the date to shoot for and turn out to vote.
Right.
Can you turn in your packet yet? Your candidate packet yet?
So can't turn the packet in until May 11th.
Okay.
So we don't even know who all is running. I know that several people have picked up packets for position 6, but we don't know who all is running until packets get turned in, all 50 signatures get verified, and then on the 26th is that closing time. You have to get everything 26th. By May 26th. Got to get everything in, which is there's some financial statement stuff. You have to file with the county clerk. You got to file with the city clerk, and there's all kinds of paperwork that I'm just all right, we'll just.
Did you get your signatures yet?
Not all 50 of them. I've gotten 26 or 7.
Okay, so. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that.
All right.
This weekend, real quick.
Yeah. Well, I just started on Sunday, and it's Wednesday or what's today? Thursday.
Yeah.
And I have more than half my signatures, so I'm optimistic, but I'm not not panicking yet because it's not May 11th.
Oh yeah, so. Yeah. No, you'll get your signatures and everything.
Yeah, and I mean, what kind of stinks is I know a lot of. I mean, it's good. I know a lot of people, but I know a lot of people from all over the place. So like from Van Buren, from Alma, from Podo, but I need registered voters in Fort Smith, and so it's like, oh man.
Yeah. So, just to call them and reach out really easy.
Yeah.
So why do you want to run? Like, why do you want to be on the board? Yeah,
I think that a lot of people say that Fort Smith is corrupt and that it's a backwards town, and that a lot of people have a lot of negative things to say about Fort Smith, but I just don't see that in Fort Smith. And unfortunately, some people on the board even say that. And the person in the position now has been on the board for 16 years. I'm not about that. If I can't get something done in 2, maybe 3 terms, I'm stepping down, because it's like what I'm doing is clearly not working. Yeah. I'm a big believer in term limits. Yeah. From city to federal, I'm a big believer in term limits. I
was wondering, like, I don't really know, Drew. I wonder how we're agreeing so far.
Okay, that's for good. Sure. Excellent.
That's for sure.
Excellent.
Term limits just at all levels, meaning that you can only be a senator or a mayor or whatever for so long. So many times you can run, win, and be in the office, like president.
Yeah, because, the founding fathers, they wanted that to happen. Like, John Adams was a senator, then vice president, then president, and then he went back to his farm. Like, Washington did the same thing. Like, Washington, before they even had term limits, he was like, y'all, I'm tired, peace out.
Yeah.
And, like, that's literally what he did. And so I just think that we should follow our founding fathers' idea, which their idea actually was to rewrite the Constitution every 17 years. But we haven't done that, so.
I think that's like the global average of
17
countries
years.
Is 17 years. Most countries only last under that constitutional government organization for 17 years.
And then empires average is 250, and America's coming up on that.
We're getting there,
We're getting there.
We're getting there. So I'm still like just like you said, that you want to run because you see Fort Smith as a good place.
Yeah.
Really. Like we talked about the other day, that's why you're still here.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful, just about America, our empire, and our area, I think this is the shit. Like, this is the best time to be alive.
Oh, for sure.
Excuse my language.
For sure.
So, you said on your card, you said consent decree.
Consent decree.
See that, even that. Yeah. Saying it, and people keep hearing it and don't know what it is.
Right.
So, educate us.
Yeah. So, the reason I know so much about the consent decree is because when I worked for the Times-Record as a reporter, my beat was the city, which is why I know so much about the city in general. And why I know all the directors and the mayor and all that stuff. And
how long did you do that?
I did that for about 15 months.
Okay, good.
And so that's the reason I moved out here. Was because I was a grad student, got my graduate degree in literature, was looking for a writing job in Boston, New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, D.C., everywhere. And this is where I got a job. So I was like, all right, guess I'm moving to Arkansas.
There you go. Had you ever been here before?
I had not. The first time I set foot in Arkansas was with a U-Haul behind me.
Wow.
So, talk about a leap of faith.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it was super interesting. Hadn't ever lived in the Central Time Zone. All my friends are in the Eastern Time Zone. And it's just like, I had this moment where I was like, all of my friends are in a different time zone. Like, I don't have any friends in this time zone when I first moved here, because I moved here in December of 19. And then, of course, COVID hit May of 2020 or March of 2020. Yeah. So I had about 3 months to get to know the place. And I was like, all right, guess I'm learning my apartment real well.
Yeah.
And so when I worked for the Times Record, I am a big nerd. I have over 1,000 books. Like, I love to read. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, you know what? People keep talking about this consent decree, and no one can really explain it to me. You get different pieces of it from different people. And so I just set out to read the 120-page consent decree. And so a definition of a consent decree is...
120, you're right, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's a legal document. So a consent decree is when there is a court case and a lawsuit takes place, the consent decree is the judge's ruling to make sure that the losing party does what they're supposed to do. So if it were a custody case, the consent decree would be, you pay this amount child support, you get this much time, this person gets this much time, like primary caregiver, joint custody, holidays, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's basically what the decision is. And it's written by a judge, and so it's a very legal document, it's very heady as far as the reading of it. And so I read the entire thing, and just at one point, this is where I kind of got a burr in the saddle of the directors, was at one point I realized that we were out of compliance because we had an annual report that our utilities director writes. And I read that annual report and was like, oh, we're out of compliance on these two areas. So in my mind, this is a public document. Mm-hmm. This should be public knowledge. The board of directors at least should know. And so I wrote it in my article. And then one director calls and says, how did you find this out? What in the world? And we didn't know. And I was like, oh, oops. Yeah. And another director calls me and says, who told you to read the actual annual report? And I was like, page 84 of the consent decree. Yeah. And at the time, I was actually sick and I was staying at home. And so I was like, time. I was not in the mood to, I was not in the mood for anybody to fight me. And so when that one director called and asked me who told me to read the annual reports, I just flat out I just told them, I was not in the mood. And so I just went page 84 of the consent decree. Yeah. As if somebody had told me to go look at a tip, and I was like, no, man, this is public record.
Go ahead. I don't want to start name dropping right off the bat. There's a local lawyer who is very involved in checking the board.
Yeah, he did not check the board on this.
And he's filed a lot of lawsuits and stuff like that.
And so my thought on the consent decree is that we just got a 5-year extension. So what the consent decree told us is that we have to fix, because we were dumping back years and decades ago, we were dumping raw sewage into the Arkansas River. Mm-hmm. So and the federal government got tired of saying, y'all don't do that. Mm-hmm. So lawsuit ensued. Feds told us, fix your water system, fix your pipes, fix your leaks, fix all of these things. Mm-hmm. And you have to hit these certain landmarks each year. Mm-hmm. And
so much work done.
So much work done per year. Yeah. So we got a 5-year extension because of the 2019 flood. Mm-hmm. Because that kind of set us back, kind of exposed some water leaks that may not have been exposed as quickly. Yeah. And so we went before the federal government, was like, look, this is a 500-year flood. It devastated our entire town. It set our entire town back, not just in utilities, but in all kinds of stuff.
The house, you parked out front, mm-hmm. facing that way. The house straight ahead at the bend, it's empty. You can still see the water line. an old lady lived on this block for, she lived in that house for 20 years after moving from like one of these couple houses over here for 20 plus years. Yeah. 30 years, and then lived literally like
has lived a mile radius.
Yeah, no, same block. She lived there, and then the house on this side. Yeah. That she lived in the longest and raised her kids, and then moved over there. And then when her husband passed, she moved over there. Yeah. And when the flood happened, she went to assisted living.
And so because of that, we were able to get a 5-year extension. Mm-hmm. So we are now, we have 12 years right now, 12 more years to finish everything in there, which I think is definitely accomplishable. And a lot of, like, the long and short of it is, if we don't use federal money in some way to get the consent decree taken care of, the water rates will continue to rise. And so that's a huge reason of why the big water rate hike to begin with was to pay for the consent decree.
Yeah. So what do you mean you use federal money?
So with the
because I know you talked about
funding,
that.
Yeah. So the ARPA funding says that you can use it for infrastructure.
Right.
So what happens is that the ARPA funding is not to pay for future COVID needs.
What's ARPA?
So the ARPA is the American Rescue Plan.
Gotcha.
And American Rescue Plan Act is the final A. And so with ARPA funding, it's to backfill what you did spend on COVID. So overtime, gotcha. PPE, personal protection equipment, any kind of rebuilding, like, because there were a lot of vent stuff that you could do.
So you're saying that we should use that money that because we've already got it coming in, right?
Right.
It's a lot of people don't know, what we got coming in, where it's going from. They just think like, oh, taxes are high, without knowing the breakdown of it,
Right. And I can't remember off the top of my head the exact amount that we have coming in. Yeah. But if we can use that some way to improve our water system in such a way that we can use that money to pay for the consent decree instead of raising water rates again, then I'm all for that, because I don't want to raise people's taxes any more than is absolutely necessary, which I mean, in my opinion, not like 95% of the time not absolutely necessary.
Right.
So yeah.
That's good. I liked that you had that idea and you were already thinking about that, and that you were thinking about actual things to accomplish actual things, and not just saying, oh, I'm good, like, hey, look at me, I'm good. Like right away you were like, oh, hey, boom, this is what I want to do. Right. And, so let me ask you, because I met you the other night at the meeting when they talked about the apartments. Right. I've been...
Looks at camera like Jim Halpert on The Office.
Yo, I'm telling you, because I felt like there was a point when they asked a realtor a question, but the board members were so focused on how do we criminalize this negligent property owner. So how do we charge this dude with a felony? How do we charge this dude with a felony?
When it had already been said by the police chief, we can't.
Yeah. So that, it's a civil matter.
In my opinion, when the police chief goes forward and says we cannot charge them with a felony, in my opinion, he's the expert. We can't charge you with a felony. Let's move on. Right. To me, that should have been the end of the discussion. Yeah. And then it went on for 30 more minutes.
Man, I don't know. It was a while. It was a while, and it that kept circling. Now I got a message that, and I don't know if you've seen it or if you got it. I'll send it to you. Okay. Kind of detailing. I think dude's name is Steve. Was his name Steve? The guy that was up talking.
Jimmy.
Well, there was Jimmy, and then there was
Sean.
There you go. So Sean had been and there was somebody before Sean, and then Sean took over at some point. But since 2018, they've been in contact with the owner and the finance company, and talking about different things with the property and all that. So I got the whole
spiel.
The notes.
Yeah.
Basically, the notes about the emails, and who was contacted when. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, I'm really hungry right now. Thank you for sending this to me. And so they've been really on it, on it, doing something with it. However, at this point, it's like one, it's a privately owned piece of property, and so there's legal steps that they have to do. It's not just like eminent domain and take a car, take a house or take this or take that, and Kevin said that, I mean, I also will say his name. You're running. So Kevin said he was going to run, right? Kevin Settles, he's been there 16 years.
He's been there 16 years.
Yeah.
He, to my knowledge, he picked up paperwork to run for mayor. So, again, until filing, we can't say for sure I'm running against Kevin or whatever. So that's why I'm always and I'm just the kind of person that I've always hated the mudslinging of politics.
Yeah.
So it's like I try really hard not to be like, oh yeah, this specific person, yeah, I hate them. Like, because one, I don't hate anybody. And not saying that you hate Kevin. Yeah, no, I don't hate Kevin. Yeah. And I really don't hate anybody on the board.
Yeah.
And there's some directors I get along with really well.
Yeah.
LaVon and Dre and Neil I get along with really well. Kevin and Robin, meh.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't really talk to and Jared, I just don't really talk to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just one of those things. And George Katsavis is George Katsavis, and he runs his own ship.
Yeah, because George is a Fort Smith guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can find him at George's all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, if we run into each other, we talk, we catch up, and
driving a 30-something-year-old vehicle. That's the way he governs.
Yeah.
Though, he's got good business and things like that. I know he's got other family that owns businesses and things here in town. But really, he governs to where he doesn't want to spend the people's money.
Right.
And that's a big point.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I have on my on one of my cards is like, I'm fiscally conservative. Is like, I'm not going to be like, hey, we need to spend all of this money. But once all of the things that we can do for free have been exhausted, we got to spend some money.
Yeah.
So in my job, I'm criminal justice coordinator for Washington County.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about that and what you do with that.
Yeah, so the short explanation is criminal justice coordinator for Washington County. So the short explanation is that I work with judges, law enforcement, and community members to help reduce the jail population and recidivism, which recidivism is kind of a $5 word that basically means reoffending.
Yeah.
And that's like the most common question I get after I give that spiel is, wait, what's recidivism? And I'm like, yes, this is things that I know that not necessarily everybody knows. Mm-hmm. And so I am working on that. And so what we do is we have a committee, a criminal justice coordinating committee, and we have the public defender, the prosecutor, several judges, a couple of community members. Arissa Health is basically the counterpart to Western Arkansas Center for Counseling and Guidance Center. Down here, Arissa Health is that up there. And so we have a couple people from there. Their crisis stabilization unit manager, she's on our committee. And so we look at the things that we can do for free. We're holding an amnesty day, like a failure to appear clinic. And so if anybody has a failure to appear warrant out for them, they can come to this clinic, talk to the prosecutor and the public defender, go before a judge, and plead their case. Because, you know, sometimes people miss an alarm, or they don't have a calendar, and they plead
their case for their charges, or their case for, hey, this is why I missed.
For their charges.
Okay,
so
right there, so they don't have to go. So basically, you're talking about people that miss court, something like that, got a warrant.
Yep.
Now they don't have to go and pay the warrant fee.
Right.
Get that.
Right. So that's the goal of this failure to appear clinic, is to, because if they get picked up on a speeding charge or any other charge, then they're going to jail. Well, our jail is already overcrowded, so that kind of reduces that right there. And their last amnesty day was their first. It was held back in January, and they were able to plead 27 people, which may not seem like a lot, but that's 27 beds. And
I think of it that's 27 lives.
That too.
That are connected to other lives that aren't interrupted.
Yep. 27 jobs that aren't lost, 27 car payments that aren't missed, 27 apartments that aren't for apartments or houses that aren't evicted. And so what we try and do is go before the quorum court, which is the legislative branch of the county, and we...
Sorry, my brain.
You're fine.
I got arrested on a date one time.
Oh, no.
They said it was like $50. I didn't pay. I had a $300 fine, and I was supposed to be the good guy.
Yeah.
Like, my mom set me up with her friend's daughter because she dated all these thug dudes, and I was supposed to be the good guy.
And then you got arrested.
Her taillight or something was out, and we were coming back from somewhere, and we get pulled over, and then they ID'd me, and he was like, "You're not a runner." What? What do you mean? What? And I found the receipt like a year later I paid it in full.
Yeah.
And this is years ago before I guess we still probably have problems with computers. But,
100%.
So, sorry. That's why I was smart.
That's great.
Like,
I love it.
I tell you,
I love it.
Cost me a relationship, and you know.
But yeah,
over $50, you know. So that $50,
right? And then the
cost
other,
me the 50 plus the 75.
Yeah. Well, and the other problem is
the
other problem is you were the passenger. Why are they IDing the passenger?
Hey,
we could go down that road.
We'll have other talks about
I'm happy to come back.
How that works.
I'm happy to come back.
Yeah.
I have lots of thoughts.
Yeah.
But
so Washington County.
So Washington County, and so we have to go before the quorum court, which is the legislative branch of the county, and we have to say, hey, so right now we're hoping to get a diversionary case manager, which that person would look at the people in jail as they come in and say, hey, you qualify for this program. You qualify for drug court. You qualify for veterans court. Let's get you into that program and out of jail.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to hire a diversionary case manager. Well, you know how quorum courts are. They don't want to spend money. And they don't want to spend money if it's not proven, which is really hard to prove until you've already done it. And so it's like we're in that vicious cycle. And so I understand the asking side of it. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that will help in the giving side of it, in the saying, okay, have you explored other options? Why, like last night with the Kincaid property, they were saying there's this one bid that's $900,000 and this other bid that's $600,000. Well, one question that nobody asked is, why is there a $300,000 difference in these bids?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that's the first question that popped into my mind was, why is the $300,000 difference? Are we gonna go with the cheaper route and then have a lot of change orders that charge us that we end up paying $900,000? Or should we go with the $900,000 that looks irresponsible by going with the more expensive one, but we don't have the change orders, and so it's face value.
Yeah,
it's face value.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I think a lot of people maybe don't understand with going, like, just going with the cheapest price, well, that's not always the end cost. So my dad's an engineer, so he knows all of the construction, change orders, all that stuff. And so I grew up with him talking about that and him showing us blueprints and being really nerdy, which is how I became the nerd I am today.
Good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good thing because, again, that's the right question. You know, why is there that big of a difference? And looking out for somebody else's pocket. Like, it's not... This is people's money.
Yeah.
Like, this is people's money.
Yeah.
That's been placed to the government.
Like, the government is stewards of this money. It comes full circle, too, of, like, in Christianity, it's like everything we have, God has given us. We don't own anything. Like, the truck I have outside right now, yeah, it's mine on paper, but God gave me that truck.
Yeah.
Like, the way I got that truck was my grandma, she was like 10, 15 years ago, before the S10s had stopped being made, she was like, well, when you get older, you can have the truck. And so then when I moved from D.C., I needed a car because I didn't have a car when I lived in Washington, D.C. because you don't need one.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, you remember when you said I could have the truck? You want to come in on that promise? And she's like, give me one crisp $1 bill and I will give you the truck. And so on paper...
Sell you the truck.
Yeah.
She would sell you the truck.
She will sell me the truck for a crisp $1 bill.
Yeah.
And so on paper, that truck is mine.
Yeah.
But for the grace of God, I would not have that truck.
Yeah.
And so in city government, all the way up to federal government, the money that we have is the taxpayers' money. And we are stewards of that money to make the city worth the tax that people pay.
Amen.
So if we're gonna pay, like a lot of people complain about the 10% sales tax or total, or the 10% tax total of it. I'm still recovering from the 10-cent bag tax in DC. So it's like, in my mind, I'm still...
10-cent bag tax.
So the plastic bags, they cost 10 cents in DC. Like, if you... Yeah.
Get out of here.
So this is why I have reusable bags.
They do that in places where people will do it.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so, like, it's in all over Europe. And then... yeah, and so it's just the idea to be more environmentally friendly, which I appreciate that part of it, because it did get me using reusable bags. And so, but yeah, and so people complain about how high the taxes are here, but turn around and see how beautiful the city is. Like, we just have a brand new inclusive park down by the riverfront, which I have a lot of friends with special needs kids, and that's awesome for them. So in my mind, that makes it worth the 10% tax that I pay.
And they're putting one in at Creekmore.
Yep.
That's what we're billed as here, is quality of life.
Yeah.
You know, we are a quality of life town.
Yeah.
And that means the ball fields, the schools, the parks, the commute, you know, and then on top of that, the scenery and all that. I mean, like I said, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
You know, I've spent a little bit of time in other places. It's just, there's just too many upsides.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean, when I moved here, people ask, I went back to North Carolina, which is where I'm from, beginning of March, and people asked, like, are you gonna stay in Arkansas? And I never really saw the appeal of the beach. I only saw the appeal of the mountains, which Arkansas has, and so I'm like, yeah, I think I am. And so, and another thing is that I could very easily move up to Washington County for my job, like if I wanted to. But I'm working from home, and I'm deciding to stay in Fort Smith and spend my sales tax dollars in Fort Smith because I believe in Fort Smith, and I believe that it's a great town to live in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's you know, that's one thing that everybody that's not from here, it says it, like, right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then I think that we got so much looking over the other side of the fence, looking over here, looking over there, that we're not watering our own yard and realizing how good it is.
Yeah.
You know, even for the things we don't have,
right,
as well.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a long list of those. So that's I really liked how energetic you were about that. I was wondering, like, would Drew be somebody that I would support? And, you know, the way my brain goes, it's just been running even from the second I shook your hand, you know, and I could feel all that energy.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking it when you came over and sat by me and started talking, and then I was like, stop. Let me focus on what's going on here and stuff, because I haven't been the biggest fan of the person in position 6.
Okay.
You know, just because of that point, tax dollars.
Yeah.
You know, I do like the way, you know, some of the mask stuff shook out, or some of his opinion on it. You know, it was never really, well, I guess it was kind of called, you know, you had to stand up for it that one day.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of wordsmithing. Back in July, we had, was it July of 20?
Oof, it was, it had to have been.
Yeah.
June or July of 20.
Yeah, it was July 11th or July something.
Yeah, it was a Saturday.
Yeah, they had a meeting about should we require mask or not require mask, because Governor Hutchinson had kicked it to the local people to decide on their own, which that should have never happened.
No, I agree.
What I'm saying?
I agree.
Asa was like, I don't want to touch this bag.
Which, I mean, to be honest, like,
who did?
Who wanted to touch that?
Me. I did. I'd have been like, yo, look, okay, here's how the law works. Here's how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, but so that day, there was a lot going on, back and forth, and then that's why they wound up tabling it, you know, so I'm not completely against him.
Right.
You know, I know that he's an elected official. There are things he wants to get done, just like them asking, can we charge this guy with a felony?
Yeah.
They're trying to find out a way to get it done versus a way to not get it done. But at the same time, you got to think about the people.
For sure.
You know, you got to think about the people. So that's...
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I wasn't the biggest fan of that position, that guy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I came over to talk to you because I was like, I need to see what this guy thinks, because he seems like he has like a thought on this. Yeah. And I have a thought on this.
Yeah.
Let me see what he thinks.
Yeah. So. I thought that there was the meeting the other night, you know, talking about the burnt up, abandoned up apartments. And have you been by there? I've
driven by, but I haven't like looked at it. I know where it is, and I need to go by there and actually look at it, because my first thought was, when they said it's going to cost $25,000 to clean up, my first thought was, well, neighborhood cleanup, like just get everybody in there and clean up the and then I texted Dre and was like, can we do that? And he's like, no, it's way too dangerous. And I was like, cool. Which
it's condemned. Like, you could have adults that go, you know, and sign whatever, but as soon as somebody gets hurt, and then especially the way the ownership problems are and everything, you know, insurance, all of that, like that's a tough one. But I thought that was crazy too. 25,000
to clean up.
Sorry, go ahead. So you text Andre.
Yeah, and he said it's too dangerous, and then I was like, then I mean, he would know better than I do, because he and Jared Rigo have been really pushing this, and I was like, I'm sure they've looked into it a lot more than I have, and
Yeah. And I think part of it is the election cycle. Things get, kind of worked on a little bit more, but also how long it's gone on.
Yeah, and for sure.
That's what we were watching, really. Mm-hmm. We were watching the city departments explain in more depth to the directors what was taking place and what was going on and what had gone on. And it kind of turned more into like a griping session. Like kind of you could see the city's workers' frustration, and so it's good when you can see people are frustrated because that means they care.
Right.
For
sure.
So, and it's not.
And I do think that...
It's not like just come in and take it.
Yeah. And I could see where it very quickly could have gotten to the point where the directors are like, well, why haven't you done something about this? Yeah. Thankfully, it didn't.
Yeah.
But I do side on the idea that if they're frustrated, if I'm frustrated and I'm just hearing about this one night a week or however many phone calls I get during the week, it's not my full-time job to deal with this. How much more frustrated are the people in that position who this is their 40-hour-a-week job?
Yeah.
And so I think showing a lot of grace to the department heads is a big thing. Yeah. Because it's nerve-wracking to get up in front of people and talk about your area of expertise when they know nothing about it. Mm-hmm. Because you use terms and ideas that require so much explanation that you get lost in the explanation and don't ever get to the point of your topic. Yeah. And so same thing happens in academia, is why you've got to write a paper that has a full enough explanation of your topic, but shallow enough that you can really harp on your topic, as opposed to being like, all right, I need to explain this huge foundation, and now I have 2 minutes to give you my point. I'm going to spend 2 minutes on this foundation, and then I'm going to spend my other 15 minutes on my point.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's nerve-wracking for utilities and building and police and fire and all that stuff and all these department heads to get up there, and the board expects them to give this full explanation or be able to give the full explanation in 2 minutes. Yeah. And that's just not possible. Yeah. And so I think asking questions is important. I think asking the right questions is important.
Let me ask you, what would we can't just take the land. So say it is ultimately foreclosed on, the bank drops the bag, would you, if it was, this is the best route to go, $900,000, would you do that? If the owner still had ownership and everything, would you spend the taxpayer dollars to have it demolished, just so it's not there?
Yeah.
Or would you leave it as an eyesore
right,
until we could get the city to own it and work out the ownership issue? What would you
do? Sure. I actually think that there is a middle road where we start the process of city ownership, like closing in on that lien, and start the process of getting the lending company to foreclose on the property, and maybe start the process of getting the city ownership again, so that we have this. Maybe it's not 100% fact that we're going to have it, but we're pretty sure we're going to have it in the end. Then work on it also and demolish it as well, like in conjunction with working to own it. So not waiting until we own it to do something, but also not clearing it out and not doing anything about the ownership. Yeah. So I think there's that two-pronged attack that you can do.
Yeah. And now it's a big space.
Yeah.
2 slots that kind of run like this and then over a little and like this. Mm-hmm. So right there, knowing that it's right there between Park and Kincaid and really close to the park.
And the elementary school too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is right down the road.
Yeah.
What would you, would you look to get that back to developers, or would you want to keep it as like a city space,
Yeah, so I haven't really looked at how close other city parks are to
right across the street.
Tillis I would not want to make it a park.
Yeah.
Because there is that park right there. I mean, I really liked that one realtor, Josh. I really liked his idea of the affordable housing that
Josh
was based. Okay, he seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders from the 2 minutes that he was able to talk.
Yeah. Again, I don't think that I don't think they leaned on that resource enough.
Right.
To pick his brain, even just to have the mindset of going that way. But like he said, pretty much it's a non-starter.
Right.
For somebody to come in and think it's going to be business viable to buy that property with all the liens, all the everything, and then still have to, put in the work, Because I don't know if they said 800,000 or something like that. But sorry, so I cut you off. Explain, tell what you heard.
Yeah, so what he was saying was like affordable housing that's not income based, but the median, which like the average of the area's income. Mm-hmm. So if that area, I don't know off the top of my head what that median income is, but let's say the median income is $75,000 for a family. Then that housing the rent is based off of a $75,000 income. So that means that somebody who has a $100,000 income as a family can come in and pay that lower rent. Maybe, as I was kind of telling you, is like, I make $60,000 a year, but most of that goes to student loans. And so it's like, they may make $100,000 a year, but they may be just out of their residency as med students and have $200,000 in debt that they need to be paying back. And so therefore that lower income of housing would be really good for those med students, and then we get cutting edge doctors in Fort Smith. And so or vice versa, is like if somebody makes less than $75,000 and they want to be in a house that's safe for their kids, or they can't afford a neighborhood that's that nice or whatever, and they can only afford like slumlords.
To be able to kind of come out of a different situation,
right. And so it's like pulling out of getting people the resources to step up in, and I hate this saying, but for lack of a better phrase, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and be able to step up and maybe get a better job because they live in a better neighborhood, because they're closer to the better jobs. And maybe they only have a bike at that point, and they need to be able within biking distance of their job, which the housing that they can afford is not biking distance from their job. But if they can afford to pay a little more in rent and then save on gas and car insurance and a car payment and all that stuff, and then maybe they can save for that car. And so just being able to enable people to live better lives.
It seems like you think about other people, not just yourselves. You know what I mean? Like to work with people in the criminal justice system, to even have the thought of different people's situations. It shows compassion. And that's a good thing. I like that.
Thanks.
I think that's dope. But sorry, I don't know.
That was pretty much my thought.
I don't know how long we've been running and everything, but what do you want to say? Like, what do you want to talk? I know that you're going to get your signatures, and for sure there's going to be one person, going for the position 6 seat.
Yeah.
I like, the things that you said about just kind of the way you'd spend tax dollars and stuff like that, and how you said it, with the idea of not spending other people's money.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but other than that, like...
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of mental health. I think that that's really important. I think it's really important to reduce the stigma that surrounds mental health, especially in the South. Mm-hmm. And I say this as a Christian who is involved in my local church, especially in the church in general, because there's this idea that if you have bipolar, which I have, or if you have anxiety or depression or ADHD or OCD or anything like that, there's this idea that you're not trusting God enough. Well, there's also the factor that we live in a fallen world. Yeah. And so the best way I've heard it explained is from a really good friend of mine in North Carolina, and she said that the brain is an organ just like anything else. And it's the most complex organ in the body. Mm-hmm. It only makes sense that it can mess up. Because if somebody can have kidney failure or asthma or cancer, I mean, how much more does it make sense that the most complicated organ in your body is not firing correctly? Because as a result of sin, we have broken bones, broken bodies, broken world. Mm-hmm. Like, we see the situation going on in Ukraine right now. It's like, that's a result of sin. Yeah. And like, because we... newsflash, we don't live in a perfect world. And so,
I think like when you dig deeper and you start to read more and understand more, then you realize that, like you said, the reasons why these things happen is because we don't live in a perfect world. Yeah. You know, we do live in a fallen world. And yeah, so just that point right there, people expect, they think that being a Christian, everything's going to be perfect.
Right. And it's not the case at all.
No.
And there's even a point where Jesus says in the Bible, in this world you will have troubles, but I give you my peace.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of peace in the storm, not deliverance from the storm.
Right.
So, and there's a quote by Charles Spurgeon, who was a Baptist pastor in England in the late 1800s, and he said, "Lord, teach me to kiss the waves that throw me up against the rock of ages." And it's the storms that dig us deeper into God's love and cause us to cling to God more. Yeah. And honestly, there are times that I would not be here if it weren't for the grace of God and Him putting people in my life that, like my therapist, like my church body, and
at the just the right time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, so I moved here, and 6 months later, I had somebody just dogging me, a person in a position of power, and they were just dogging me about this article that I wrote that called them out on some stuff that was kind of illegal. Yeah. And so they were just dogging me about it. And I didn't have any friends in the area. I was new to the area. I didn't know anybody. Church wasn't meeting because it was the middle of COVID. And I actually had a suicide attempt and called a doctor that I had met through my work and knew that he was at the ER. I texted him and was like, "Hey, can you talk for a minute?" It was midnight, 1 a.m. Yeah. It's like, "Hey, can you talk for a minute?" And told him, I was like, "Hey, dude, I just took a huge amount of pills and drank a lot of whiskey. Like, what do I do?" And he was like, "Are you suicidal right now?" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of." And he's like, "I need you to promise to be okay for 24 hours. And I'm going to call my friend at Western Arkansas and I'm going to get you in." And so set up in such a way that God provided. I wasn't making a lot of money because they grossly underpay reporters. And so, like, they set it up so that I was able to see a therapist. And because he was an intern, I was able to see him for free. Yeah. And, like, that was just, like, the grace of God that I was able to work all that stuff out. He's since graduated, but he's still in the area. So now I have a better job and I can afford therapy. And so I still go to him. And there are times that we talk about the early days, which are the dark days, the dark days of Drew's life. But just
being able to have those dark times, like I too have had just situational things, and it's not like you just wake up and you're like, oh my, I don't got the right Cheerios, I'm depressed. No, there's things that happen in our lives, and then we start to question ourselves, and our brain, for being the most powerful part,
it's also the stupidest.
Yeah, because it tells us all these lies and all of these things that we start to accept, and we take it and run with it. Yeah. And if we don't have the right guidance at the right time, and even the right diet and the right environment, we can take a dive.
Yeah, and
so it's hard. It's good when you do have people that are there.
Yeah, and so my therapist encouraged me to join a gym. I'm gonna shock you now. I do CrossFit. I know it's been an hour and I haven't talked about it. I'm like dying inside, obviously. Get down. So I joined a CrossFit gym and really built a community there. We're doing this thing called 75 Hard. Like, as a gym, there were about 20 of us that started this thing, and there's about 12 of us that we're almost done. We've got 2.5 weeks left.
How long have you been doing that?
Today is day 58, I believe.
For you at CrossFit or
for 75? CrossFit, I've been doing it. For 75 Hard, I'm on day 58. For CrossFit, I've been doing it for about a year and a half.
Yeah. So tell me how that makes you feel.
So for sure. There are times that, like, my brain is either on a manic high, which means that it's basically like a shot of adrenaline in your heart, and you're just going. And I go and I get my energy out at the gym. Yeah. And then other times when I'm in a depressive low, which it's just like I get that personal record, I get that PR. And one time, about a year ago, I went and it was open gym, which is kind of like you just go and you mess around, you throw weights around, you do whatever you want to do. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see how heavy I can do on deadlift. And I was just like, I'm just going to do it. And so I was doing it and got up to, like, the highest I had been at the time was 225. And I was like, okay, got up to 225, was able to pull out 4 or 5 reps. And was like, okay, I'm starting to feel good. Like, the dopamine is, the endorphins are flowing. And then got up and I just kept going and put those last 2.5 pounds on and got a 300-pound deadlift PR, and I was like, yes!
From 220, you said? Or?
From 225 was my previous PR to 300, and I was like, yes! And I was just on such an emotional high after that, where it pulled me out of my funk. Yeah. And I was like, this is awesome. And of course, eating right and eating enough. Yeah. Because there's, I think a lot of people get it in their heads of, if I need to lose weight, I need to cut calories. And that's not the case. You have to eat right. You have to eat the right amount. You have to eat enough, because then your body is going to start storing up fat. And then to as a self-preservation. And so, like, I've struggled with body dysmorphia and eating disorders and skipping meals because I'm not skinny enough. And it's just like, and just knowing that, you know what, I've gotten through all of that. Yeah. And God's pulled me through all of that. Yeah. He will pull me through this next storm, whatever it is. Yeah. And so the idea that, you know what, it may not end in the time frame that I want it to. It may not end in the way that I want it to, but it's going to end. Yeah. Like, and
you can smile. Yeah. Like, when you have joy, you can smile. Absolutely. Like, I've had times when I cry. Yeah. And I'm like, golly, this is messed up. Yeah. You know, like, oh, why did that person do that? Or why did this happen? Or this or that? But man, I'm glad I learned. Absolutely. I'm glad I know that now. You know, I'm glad this or that. You know, so it's man. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. So a lot of people say that right there, that the physical, you know, getting working out.
Well, I think education too is huge. Yeah. So it's like if people like me are not open about mental health, then the stigma's going to remain.
Yeah,
and So yeah.
I had, I think I'm a pretty open person. Sometimes I'm a little weird, and sometimes I look back and I think I was too open, but I'll leave it up there. Or something, when sharing posts and things like that.
I feel that.
And I learned from having different therapist friends and stuff what going through hardship and trauma does, like what it looks like, and be like, what? Oh wow!
Yeah.
Check,
Yeah.
and then being like, okay, well, this is something that I've experienced. This isn't me.
Right. It doesn't define you.
Yeah. It's not me.
It's like, and that's like, so my language about my bipolar has really changed. Is like it's changed from I'm bipolar to I have bipolar. And so like that one extra word is just like such a big game changer. Because it's like, yeah, this is something that is happening to me. It doesn't define who I am. Yeah. For me, Christ defines who I am.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That is baller.
Thanks.
I don't know what else to talk about. Drew came through. Yeah. I appreciate you. Absolutely. Drew Smith.
Yes.
Drew Smith going to be on the ballot. So anybody can vote for you in Fort Smith. All the at-large positions, it'll be open for everybody to vote. Hopefully, there's no, hopefully, so if there's 2 people, then
go straight to November.
Right. So, and if there's 1 person, then boom, you're in there.
Yeah.
Baller. So, we'll hope for one of those. I would say, and I do want to talk to the other candidate and everything, but I'd give you my vote,
thanks.
That's the way it sits now,
Well, and it's one of those things that it's like, I'm at this point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to run. See what happens.
Yeah.
If I lose, nothing changes. Like, my entire life stays the same. So, if I win, I become a city director and I get a lot more responsibility, but if I lose, I'm still a Fort Smith person.
Yeah.
I'm still living in Fort Smith. I'm not moving just because I lost.
I'm
going to Little Rock. Lost. I'm going to Little Rock. But yeah, no, it was really funny because I was telling you at the very beginning, is like, I ran it by my therapist and he was like, yeah, I think it's a great idea. Like, go for it. It's a challenge. Like, go for it. And then we started talking about something else, and I was drinking my little Coke, and it's a Kill Cliff, which in a can, and I was like messing with the tab, as you do when you're nervous and you're talking about things that you don't want to talk about, and, therapy. And so I was messing with it, and it fell in, and I just looked at it, and he just stops what he's saying and goes, completely capable of running a city, and I went, shut up.
Yeah, I can. I can't. So. Did you fight with it for a while?
I did.
The negative thoughts.
Oh, for sure. Because it was like, you're not gonna win. You've only been here 2.5 years. Like, nobody knows you.
Yeah.
And I was like,
nobody knows any of the directors. What are you talking about?
That was what I was thinking.
We know Mayor McGill and Andre, and then a couple other people there.
It's like, your ward director, maybe. Yeah.
No, like, people know that Andre's over here because he's been on this side for a minute.
Yeah.
Some people know.
Yeah.
Some people know.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that the mayor doesn't have a vote, unless it's just a tiebreaker vote.
Or a veto. He has veto power.
Yeah, so they believe he ain't never vetoed nothing.
He hasn't. He thought about it once. He thought about it once.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to ask him about that.
Yeah.
But most people don't know, so just to find people that are getting involved.
The city administrator runs runs the city. Like, he makes the day-to-day decisions, and then the city directors hold the purse strings. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's city administrator government 101. It's just city administrator makes most of the decisions. Board of directors holds the purse strings. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
You know,
I will say, one of my friends' little kids, they were trying to get her to ask what a director at large does, and instead of asking me, because we were Snapchat videoing, and instead of asking me, she just very confidently, she's 4, very confidently says, well, it just it beeps and runs out of batteries, and then Daddy replaces the batteries. And I'm like, man, if that's all a director does, I'm game.
Like, yo, beep,
replace my batteries.
Little kids are so...
I love it.
I was hanging out with the whole, 3 different classes of kindergartners today. We went to Bentonville, went to a museum up there. And just the things that the kids say. And they see me there at the school, you know, and so they know my son and everything.
Yeah.
Just the things that they say. It's just the wildest, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The wildest. One kid said that her mom was going to buy a museum, but...
You love it.
You know, it wasn't payday yet or something.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And her mom was there, so she wasn't talking about, coming and it wasn't payday.
Right.
But, no,
yeah, and I mean, when my oldest nephew, he's 8 now, but when he was, 2 or 3, I taught him the Ghostbusters song. And that's still my proudest moment as an aunt.
The Ghostbusters song?
Yeah, who are you going to call?
Oh,
Ghostbusters.
Yeah. I was like, Ghostbusters song?
That's still my proudest moment as an aunt.
It's Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Did you, where did you grow up at?
I grew up in North Carolina.
Okay, so that's where you graduated and everything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So, did you watch the Oscars at all?
No, just
except
that
the
one.
Will Smith
that one part. I didn't know it was on. Nobody knew the Oscars was on.
Actually, I did.
Oh, get that.
So, have you seen the new West Side Story yet?
Yet?
Are you going? Have you seen the new West Side Story?
No.
Are you going to? Okay.
No.
So
probably not.
the girl who plays Anita in the new West Side Story, she won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and the only reason I was even aware of when the Oscars were or that she was nominated is that I went to high school with her.
Oh, get down.
And had a few classes with her. So
get down.
Yeah.
Get down. So you were watching and you're
I mean, I was watching Twitter.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not gonna watch the Oscars. I'm gonna be like, and so I'm proud of her. I think she's doing really well.
I wasn't gonna ask. You said it. I didn't say it. What do you think?
About the Will Smith slap?
Yeah, about the Will Smith slap.
It was scripted.
You think it was scripted?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, then that's a whole thing.
I mean, here's the thing. Will was laughing until Jada threw him a look. So, in my opinion, if it wasn't scripted, that's kind of an abusive relationship anyway. Where it's like she told him on live, on Facebook Live, that she was having an affair, multiple affairs. So that's an abusive relationship anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like... I do think it's wrong.
What if it was real? What if it was real?
I do think it's wrong that they banned him for 10 years.
Will Smith.
I do think it's wrong that they banned him for 10 years, considering how many, and this is going to get into stuff, how many white directors and actors have been molesting kids, having sex rings,
all the dark stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff that happens to all of these white... And they're still coming. Yeah. But one black guy comes out and slaps another black guy who was laughing about it. Chris Rock was laughing about it 2 seconds later. And
could I say that I don't... Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. David Banner said that he thinks secretly most black people want to be white and won't admit it. David Banner, the rapper, Georgia. Yeah. I don't know if Will would have slapped Ricky Gervais. You know, I don't know if he'd have slapped somebody else.
The Rock.
That was up there. Yeah, he ain't slapping The Rock. And I love that people compared that.
Yeah,
I don't think he'd slap anybody. And I think that one, I mean, I'm not saying, throw Will Smith out,
No.
He's just the horrible, he didn't go to town on him,
Yeah.
But it was uncalled for. That's
for sure. For sure.
It was uncalled for talking. And that could get into a whole nother conversation about what groups are justifying violence.
Yep.
Because there are people out here justifying violence for getting their feelings hurt.
Yep.
Oh, they said something about me. They this or that. They disrespect me. They didn't call me the right thing.
They don't have the same beliefs I do.
They don't, yeah. And so now I get, because they're a Trump supporter, you can hit them. Because they're this, you can hit them.
Yeah, no.
What?
No.
No, you can't hit them.
Yeah.
You got to keep your hands to yourself. Sorry your feelings are hurt.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I agree with people talking bad about others and all of that. But at the end of the day...
But that's what therapy's for.
Right. And it's not physical violence. We've drawn a line in the law that I can't put my hands on you and you can't put your hands on me.
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah.
And after that, none of that justifies it.
Yeah.
In my opinion. That's my soapbox on that one.
That's valid.
Of it,
that's a valid
none of
soapbox.
it justifies that. But that, again, we've got a weird thing happening in America where we're calling for violence to different people, and justifying it. I don't do it. I don't do it.
Yeah.
I don't do it. But,
well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Happy to come back anytime.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to grow.
Yeah.
I'm going to grow and put more pictures up on that side of the wall.
I love it.
And all that. Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.